Hi there, I'm Daniela. Welcome to a space created for women struggling with their breast implants or have already said goodbye to them, just like we did.
And I'm Michelle. We're so glad you're here. Together, we're supporting a community of courageous women redefining beauty and confidence.
The Breast Implant Breakup podcast
Starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very first episode of the Breast Implant Breakup podcast. We're so happy that you're here with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to you too, Danny.
Thank you, Michi. Welcome. We're so excited.
It's our first episode. We are a little nervous, mostly excited, and definitely very ready to share our story about how we decided to break up with our breast implants and how we said goodbye to them. But I think that we kind of need to go back in time and backtrack that story and start from the very beginning as to why did we ever think that we needed them? And, was it a mental need? Was it a physical need? Was it what kind of pressures made us decide to put breast implants in the first place? Danny, when did you get your first surgery? Because you've had two, right?
Yeah, so I got mine in 2004, the very first time. I was 20
How
years
old were
old.
you?
I was
20? You're so young.
I was a baby, yes. There's so many reasons why, and I think everyone has their own reason. But we would love to share with you our personal reason why, and maybe this is something you can relate to. I will say, why did I get breast implant? I think I felt self-conscious.
Even at 20, you thought, I should have bigger breasts by now.
I think that's exactly the time where you are, you're not a teenager anymore, that you're coming into adulthood.
Yeah.
I think that's when you are more self-conscious.
And let's also put it in context, because you were living in Venezuela at the time. And obviously, you guys know Venezuela is known for creating and having some of the most beautiful women. But I say creating because a lot of them do go through a lot of surgical procedures to compete in all these beauty pageants, right? So it's kind of expected that women undergo surgery, and it's totally normalized in that society.
Yeah, so I feel like because in Latin America, there is this culture, well, that was at least 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Things are maybe worse now.
A little different? Oh, yeah. Worse?
Yeah, I think there's natural beauty. Mm-hmm. And then you have these expectations of having the perfect body. Yeah. And so when I was on my 20s, I remember I was very self-conscious because, I have all my group of friends and they all look like they were 20s. And I looked like I was 12 because I did not have breast tissue.
At all.
Nothing. And so when I was going to college, I remember that I was like, I don't get offended very easy. I don't think I get embarrassed, but that hit me. And this was coming from men, not even women, which is more sad.
Yeah.
And I remember these little comments about how I look, and they will say things like, "Oh, you got your mom's face, so beautiful, but you got your dad's chest." And I'm like, I wanted to cry. I'm like, that was just mean. So Absolutely. I was so self-conscious that I remember begging my dad. So just to clarify to the people who's watching and listening to this, so my mom passed when I was 9 years old. Okay. So I grew up just with my dad and my brother, who's 1 year older than me. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, I felt like maybe if I would have my mom alive.
Yeah, she could have validated your body or told you, hey, I didn't get my breasts, bigger breasts until I was 25 or after I had you guys.
And she was naturally beautiful. Mm-hmm. She didn't have a lot of breasts, And I think she would have said, you're beautiful the way you are, sweetie. Yeah. You don't need this. And not that my dad did a poor job with that, but he was a man. And I think he felt the pressure of me saying, do it, pay for this. I need the surgery. So, I recognize he did his best, but I was 20. So I was maybe not that nice and I just wanted that. But also the pressure of these friends, called friends, told me, well, you just look like a boy. And I'm like,
yeah, I wouldn't call those friends.
Yeah. So I begged him and he said, okay, let's do it. So I got my first implants in 2004 when I was 20. And then after a few years, I think it was in 2011, there was all these things on the news about this brand PIP, I think it was, and they were from France. And then everyone was like, you need to remove these implants. They were not good. And so my doctor reached out to me like, you need to remove these implants. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So no,
How many years had it been since you got them?
from 2004 to 2011.
Okay.
So 7 years. And I remember just thinking, okay, I'll replace them. And not only have to replace them, but you have to make them bigger. That's the other thing, that the more you get surgery,
Because your skin had stretched out by then.
yes. So I was like, well, actually the first time I got them very small because I told my doctor I want them to look as natural as they can be, you know? And so he said, well, the only problem is that now we have to make them a little bit bigger. So I remember I started with 380 volume.
Okay.
And then the second one, it was 400. So I felt like, okay, it's just 20 more, but we'll see. And, but I will say I was
Did you like them better, the bigger size?
Not actually. I feel like it was hard for me to enjoy the way, I mean, let me say it like this. Back then, yes. Because, you know, like I say, we're Latinas, and then there's this culture.
In Venezuela.
And especially in Venezuela.
That
you
makes
have
a
to be
difference.
this hot girl who has the, you know, the big breast. And then, you know, everything perfect.
All the curves.
Yeah. So I was in the modeling industry too. And that was another reason why I wanted the implants.
Pressure.
Because I was doing some auditions and commercials, and I will never book the ones who were for like a beer brand or things like that, like alcohol. Because
you needed to be an adult.
Because I look like a kid. And I'm like, so I actually got the implants and I felt now I can book these things. And I did.
I can sell beer.
I did a lot of photos and stuff for actually some beer brand. And I felt like, okay, this is what I wanted. So modeling industry put a little pressure on me on how I needed to look.
Yeah.
And which is different now. And I love that because now they want more people to look like you. The natural you, your beautiful self, no fillers and implants. Like, you know, the more natural that you can be, that's the better.
That's right. And we both work with the same talent agency here in Utah. And they actually tell you that, like, you know, the less things that you have added on you, like fake eyelashes or fillers, like the less opportunities they have to book you for projects. It doesn't mean that you won't get booked, but you might be booked for only specific projects. So they want to make sure that they have enough projects they can book you for, and therefore the more natural look serves you better in those terms. But anyway, that's just the modeling industry.
What about you? What's the reason why?
Pressures. So I think I didn't feel much of a pressure. Interestingly enough, I started doing TV and radio when I was 16, and I was as flat as I am today after removing my implants. But I guess because I was 16, there was no expectation for me to have a womanly body. So I grew up doing, you know, being in front of the cameras and feeling comfortable with my skinny self. So I never felt that pressure, but I did have the expectation, the self-expectation that someday when I grow up, I finally will look like my peers who also got their breasts. Like, that's just how we feel as women. I think a lot of us, you know, we come into our teenage years and we think, oh, this is the time when I'm going to start having them. And then you actually start seeing them grow. You know, your nipples kind of come out first, and it's like the most embarrassing thing ever. And I remember when it was actually starting to I was showing some difference in my body, or it was, you know, my hormones were starting to act up, and I was starting to notice the breast kind of come out. I felt so embarrassed and so shy, and I like became really hunched. Like I became, what's the word? Like hunchback, basically. I don't know. Like I was just like hunching a lot. And eventually, when I was like, okay, well, I'm not embarrassed anymore, like it's time to come out, then I felt like maybe I did that to myself. Like I felt so embarrassed when I first saw signs of breasts coming out that I, you know, mentally told myself, my body, that I shouldn't have them. So anyway, weird psychological things I was considering, but I never got breasts, you know, to fully come out. I was never even an A cup. I was so flat chested. And I still waited until I was 27 because I was hoping that eventually my body would hear my thoughts again and say, no, I do want you guys. Like, it's time for you to come out, but they never did. But it was just mostly my expectation of what a woman's body needs to look like. And I have to admit that that expectation has to come from, you know, the social pressures and expectations that we all have, right? It's like, if you're a woman, then this is the body that you have. There's a specific design for that experience of being a human being as a woman. So I say it was all my own expectations, but I'm sure that there was some social pressures that were behind that, you know, subconsciously. At the time, I had a boyfriend that fully supported my decision, so I felt like, okay, he's on board, like that's cool. Nobody in my family really said I shouldn't do it, just like you. I felt supported. And I think that back then, I got mine done in 2009 when I got my breast implants. 2009, we still didn't have like the whole, you know, super voluptuous woman. Like we didn't have so much emphasis on having a big booty or very big hips or bigger lips. It was all about the breasts from what I remember. So I feel like I kind of went for that trend. It was the trend of the time. You could get breast implants. There was a lot of marketing around it. So I would hear a lot of doctors promote their services. And specifically the one I went for, he promoted like a really fast recovery, which mine was. I was back in work like 4 days after my surgery. So yeah, it was pretty easy. So that kind of also played into the reason why I decided to do it. I'm like, okay, well, there's financing for it. You know, they're making it easy for me to get the money. The doctor, you know, works with the financial agencies that provide you with the loans. And then they also give you like this get fast really quickly with me. And, you know, I fell for it. And lastly, this was a little bit of a pressure. I thought for me to compete in the big corporations that I wanted to work at, I wanted to go eventually to Miami and work for Univision. So it's a big national station, international, I should say, station, TV station. I thought, you know, if I want to do that, if I want to go for that dream, I better have the breasts that they expect me to have, which are bigger. You know, I didn't want to feel like I couldn't compete with other women that were trying to have the same job, and if I didn't have the breasts that I needed for it. So a lot of reasons, really.
And it's funny you say that you had a boyfriend who supported you with that.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know, I can't recall if I had a boyfriend back then, but I do feel like I was, oh, if these comments are coming from men, and does that mean they're not gonna like me? I think they won't. So, you know, I felt that pressure too. And now being a mom I have a stepdaughter, she's a teenager, she's 15. I feel like this is the right opportunity as parents to tell our kids and remind them every day how beautiful they are, the way they are.
Yeah.
And not that they need to feel self-conscious or let other people's opinion affect you that much.
Yeah. And I think that it's also about pointing out beauty in other aspects of yourself. So I remember this one time I came back home from school and I had not been picked to be in the cheerleading squad because I wasn't pretty enough or something like that. And I remember feeling just so left out and not good enough. And I told my mom about this. I must have been in 7th or 6th grade. And my mom said, Michelle, she said, Michelle, it's not all about how you look in the outside. It's also how you think in the inside. And that specific comment helped me shift my idea of other aspects that matter about your persona, about who you are. It's the mind, not just the body. It's how you feel. It's how you perceive the world. And I learned that from that moment.
That's something that we're lacking so much now, because we need to help our children to work on their mindset and make their mindset bulletproof.
Exactly. And to specifically to value the beauty of the way you think. There's beauty in that. If you're a creative person, if you're a kind person, if you see beauty around you in the world because it's so needed, then that is value, not just how you look, like you say. So it's also shifting that. Where does beauty lie in a human being?
Yeah.
It's not just in our bodies, obviously.
And I think the way you look at yourself is how people is going to perceive you. So if you don't see yourself like a beautiful human being, then people won't see that beauty. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or maybe if you don't see the beauty in you, then they can sense that insecurity. and they can target you for mean comments if they're that kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those were the reasons why
So
we
many
got
reasons.
the breast implants.
But the reasons why we removed them, that's going to have to be for another episode, because that's definitely a whole conversation, and that's like the premises of the show, the reasons why you would opt for removing your breast implants. But I think it's a good thing that we backtracked and we talked about the pressures that we felt. These were different times. Obviously, we're talking 2004, 2009.
Yeah.
There were different societal pressures. Now things have changed. Maybe now girls don't feel the same way. Maybe it's more pressure on having the perfect lips or having the perfect chin, or who knows what other things. But
yeah. And we would love to hear your why. So please share with us on Instagram, Breast Implant Breakup, and tell us the reasons behind why you got the breast implants in the first place.
That's right, especially for women who are considering removing them or who have already done so. We do want to know what kind of pressures that you feel like you had to succumb to at the time. If you feel like you are super happy with your breast implants, we also are super happy for you, and we want you to keep on enjoying them. And if you ever feel like it's time to break up with them, then we'll be here for you as well.
Thank you so much for being here again, and we can't wait to see you on our next episode.
See you then. Take care.